Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Josie's Point of View, where we focus on human interest stories from the Carolinas and beyond. Today's Friday, and it's April the 18th, 2025. It's Good Friday. Happy Good Friday to each of you, and thank you so much for tuning in. If you're new to my channel, I want to extend to you a warm welcome and thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you find the information here to be informative. And if you return viewer, by all means, thank you for coming back. You know, I always say the tide changes so frequently here on these YouTube streets. So you always have to acknowledge where your support comes from. And I want you to know I sincerely thank you for your support. Feel free to like and to share this video. And don't forget to subscribe. And today's video will focus on North Carolina military service members who were recently arrested, as well as those who were convicted for child sex crimes. I'll provide you with a summary here, and as always, I'll identify some of my sources for you in the description box. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to return to what's happening with our children and to focus on what's going on with North Carolina, specifically those who have been arrested and are convicted for violating our children. We are focusing on child sex crimes, arrest, and a conviction. And let me tell you, there were so many. The numbers were huge. So I've decided to separate out the military because the numbers were smaller and it's a lot more manageable. And because of those smaller numbers, I could bring you the arrest and the conviction all at the same time. And keep in mind, these were those who were subjected to punishment in the civilian sector. It does not include those who are being punished internally, because individuals who are being subjected to court martial, that information is rarely shared with the public. So let's go ahead and let's get started. And for the first case, we traveled to Camp Lejeune Military Marine Corps Base, where the news headline read, North Carolina Marine charged with multiple child sex crimes. And the date of this reporting was February the 14th, 2025. And the investigations leading up to that arrest started back in September of last year. And it had to do with a report from the Department of Social Services, or a report that was made to the Department of Social Services that a minor had been sexually abused. And as you already know, when it comes to minors, you never get the full extent of the story because police try to keep as much information as they can private. Police say that after a child was interviewed, they determined there was sufficient substantive information to make an arrest. And as a result of the investigation, police determined that the Marine at Camp Lejeune was the suspect, and he was eventually arrested and charged with 3 felony sex offenses against a minor. Now, the arrest was a joint effort between Navy CIS investigators in conjunction with investigators from the Onslow County Sheriff's Office. And the Marine pictured here, 22-year-old Zane Milton, was taken into custody and charged as follows. Statutory RAP of a child younger than 15, felony statutory sex offense with a child younger than 15, indecent liberties with a child. And he was taken into the Onslow County Detention Center. And after he appeared for his bond hearing, he was issued a bond of $800,000. Now it's unclear whether or not he was able to make that bond. And I looked for information, but I could not see where a follow-up court appearance had been scheduled. And moving right on to the next case, we traveled to Fort Bragg here in North Carolina, where a paratrooper was also charged with multiple child sex crimes. And the date of this reporting was February the 16th, 2025. Now, the arrest we are addressing is just a small piece of a much larger issue. Police say this case began when they received a call about a missing juvenile on January the 26th of this year. And that juvenile from North Carolina was eventually located several states away in the state of Michigan. Now, there were a total of 3 suspects, 3 men who were arrested regarding this juvenile and her disappearance. And they were not all military, but I have to mention them here because they were all identified together. When you see the write-up on them, they were all 3 of them were were being addressed, and it would be an injustice just to mention one and not mention the others. Now, the first to be arrested was this 18-year-old pictured here. He's from Michigan, and he was arrested in Michigan. Now, we know that one of the charges he faced was kidnapping. I'm sure there were others, but because of the privacy issue, police elected not to make those charges public. So he was the first to be arrested, and he was arrested in the state of Michigan, where the juvenile was located. And while police were tracking the whereabouts of this juvenile, they were able to identify two additional persons of interest, and they were subsequently arrested. Now, these arrests are based on information they received from the juvenile's cell phone. And the two are pictured here. One identified as Charles Raymond Owens. I believe he's 27 years old. He's also from North Carolina. And the second, Dustin Ray Goodrow, a paratrooper assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division. Now let's return to a paratrooper for a second. It was determined that Goodrow had solicited the juvenile for sex after meeting her on the internet, and it appears that what he's being charged with has nothing to do with the disappearance and finding her in Michigan. Apparently, this is based on information that police found on the juvenile's cell phone. So it appears that he had done his solicitation about a week prior to her disappearance. And from what and you know, there are many pieces that we will not ever learn about because you have a juvenile involved, and police try to keep as much of that information as private as possible. But I'm wondering if he was charged with kidnapping because of her age. But the fact is, he did do some online soliciting. They've most likely met up allegedly, and that's what got him into a whole lot of trouble. And so, with the assistance of Army CID, Goodrow was located in Aberdeen, North Carolina, and that's where he was arrested and charged. And according to one newspaper source, the newspaper is The Pilot, it was mentioned that based on the information contained in the arrest warrant that a sexual assault had taken place. He was charged with solicitation of a minor by a computer for a sex act and felony first-degree kidnapping, and at his first court appearance, he was issued a bond of $150,000, and he was able to pay that bond and has since been released. And again, the reason why I briefly mentioned the two civilians here is because this is the way it was carried in most of the newspaper. It was said arrests of three men connected to Aberdeen juvenile January disappearance. And because that's the way it was carried in the newspaper, I felt obligated to mention all three of them at the same time. And for the next case, we travel to Raleigh, North Carolina, because this case is based on information that was published by the Raleigh, North Carolina Police Department. And the news headline read, North Carolina Department of Public Safety engineer and Marine commander charged with 14 counts of child exploitation. And the date of this reporting was March the 28th, 2025. And here's his mugshot. He's 38-year-old Derek Wesley Frobiter of Raleigh. And as I already mentioned, he's a North Carolina state employee. He works for the Division of Emergency Management, which is part of the Department of Public Safety. Reports say he's a retired Marine Corps captain and currently is in the Marine Reserves, where he currently, according to reports, he is a commander for what a unit described as Fox Battery, 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, and he had been in that position since 2023. It was also mentioned that he's a volunteer for the Northern Wake County Fire Department. So it appears this is a very influential guy within the state, but he had been breaking the law and he finally got caught. Now, we don't know how long he had been doing what he was caught doing, but they could only charge him with what they can prove. Now, Frobiter was accused of distributing child sex abuse materials back in December. They caught him distributing those materials on two separate occasions, on December the 11th and then again on December the 22nd, 2024. So he's charged with 14 counts of second-degree sexual exploitation of a minor. I know this chart, some places say 15, but most of the places that I read says 14. So anyway, it's between 14 and 15 counts of sexual exploitation of a minor. 10 of them has to do with the arrest from the 11th, and then the remainder from the arrest from the 22nd. And when he appeared before his first bond appearing, he was issued a bond totaling $1 million. That's $850,000 for the December the 11th incident, and then additional $150,000 for the December 22nd incident. And by all accord, if he is convicted of these charges, he's going to be spending a significant amount of time behind bars, but I did not see any information regarding an upcoming court appearance. So those were the recent arrests. Let's go ahead and move directly into the convictions. Now, I saw two convictions, and they were both from December of 2024, and both of the cases were prosecuted by Department of Justice, the attorneys for the Eastern District of North Carolina. And here is information on the first case. The press release states, former Coast Guard service member sentenced to more than 11 years for receiving child pornography, and the date of this reporting was December the 10th, 2024. And this case had to do with a 36-year-old Coast Guard service member. His name is Stephen Lamont Lollis, Lollis. Now, and this conviction happened after he had been arrested and charged with multiple child sex crimes, after it was discovered that he had been soliciting child pornography from multiple women. He eventually pled guilty back in August of last year, and this case came to light when a romantic partner of Lola's had reported to the authorities that he had shown her child pornography and had even made suggestive comments about abusing the woman and her young son. And what she did, she took that information onto the authorities. She made a tip. She reported a tip, which started an investigation. And once a warrant was issued for his room and his devices, police said they found lots of videos and pictures of child pornography, but there was something that was very disturbing, even more disturbing. Police found communication in which he was directing multiple women to abuse their children and send the videos to him. And as I already mentioned, he pled guilty to the crimes in August, and in early December of 2024, he learned his fate, 133 months of confinement, followed by 10 years of supervised release. And the next case had to do with a Marine, and the press release, as you can see, states former Marine sentenced to 12 years for child sexual abuse material, and the date of this reporting was December the 20th, 2024. And the former Marine in question is a 23-year-old. His name Paul Anthony Reyes, and he was stationed at the Marine Corps station at Cherry Point here in North Carolina. That's where he was at the time of his arrest. And this case came to light as a result of a tip to investigators from an online source stating that one of his users had uploaded inappropriate material. And when investigators traced the information, the IP address led them back to Anthony Reyes. A search warrant was executed on his barracks room as well as his personal device, and it produced thousands of images and videos of child pornography, many of them too graphic to explain. And they also included RAPES of infants and toddlers. I can barely bring myself to say those words. Now, I am sure that he was facing a life sentence behind bars. So on August the 19th of 2024, he pled guilty probably to some reduced charges. And several months later, in late December of 2024, he received his sentence. And that sentence was 144 months of confinement. That's 12 years of confinement, followed by 5 years of supervised release. He was also required to pay restitution, $273,000 to 29 victims. And let me tell you, that's not enough. It's not enough sentence, and it's definitely not enough money for what he did to not just to the children, but to their parents as well. And that's the problem I have with plea deals. It allows people to see, in my opinion, to not fully pay for the crimes they commit. And so, ladies and gentlemen, this is a summary of what's been happening with our service members. It includes those who were arrested and or convicted for child sex crimes, but keep in mind, it only describes what has been taking place outside of the military, because when you look at the court-martial results, it's not always released in a timely manner. So unless you're there in person, the information is sometimes hard to come by. For example, with the Marines, the last recording of a published recording of the Marines court-martial, it was from January of 2025, and now we're talking about April, so they're several months behind. But when I come across something that was conducted in a court-martial or the results of a court-martial, I'll bring that to you in a separate setting. But stay tuned for a summary of our child sex crimes report from the civilian community.
And that's all I have for you right now. Feel free to leave me a comment below and let me know what you think about this video. And by all means, feel free to like it and to share it. And if you haven't done so already, I want to invite you to subscribe to my channel by clicking on that right subscribe button. It's on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And if you click on the bell that looks just like this one, that's a notification bell. If you click on that notification bell, you'll be the first to know whenever a new video is uploaded. I thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.